How do you convey your competitive advantage in your pitch deck story? Let's find out. All right, now that you have more clarity on your competitive landscape and who else is competing in your space, it's time to communicate your competitive advantage. And that's when you tell your audience what makes you different or better than others on the market. Now, at a high and simple level, you might have seen this triangle before. That would apply to many of the service providers or a simple business model where you could compete on the quality, you can compete on the speed, or you can compete on the cost. Now, it's very rare to be able to compete on all three at the same time. That's why you'll find many people, they'll say, pick one. Do you want the best quality? Do you want the best price? Or are you going for speed? You can rarely get all three at the same time. Now, I left this little red triangle in the center because there are very few companies that are able to do that, but that is a very rare situation. Now, if you have a more complex business model, a structure where you have multiple products and services, then you might have to dive a bit deeper. And that's why I'm sharing this strategy here from Michael Porter. Now, Michael Porter is a university professor, and he's known for his theories on economics, business strategy, and social causes. So he came up with this particular strategy where he said you can communicate your difference by focusing on cost. Do you have the lowest cost? It could be about differentiation. Do you have something different in your product or service, or about the focus, so really more focusing on a niche market. So it's not necessarily about the quality anymore, it's more about what makes you different and what are you focusing on in your market. And to make this easier to plot or to apply to different applications, he mapped it out on this quadrant. So you can see here on the quadrant, there's another layer that you can use, and that is the market size. So we're using the same three criteria, but now we're adding the market size as a new category to help map things out. So on the right, you've got the narrow market, which means a very focused and niche market. And on the left, you have the broad market, which means a much bigger market. And at the top row, you've got the cost, and at the lower row, you've got differentiation. So I'm going to take you on a tour of this quadrant so you can see where you can fit in here and what would be the best place for you to communicate that story, and that will make it easier for you to tell your audience what makes you different or better. So let's start with the cost leadership strategy. Now, cost leadership is when you can provide the best price for a mass production. Think of companies like IKEA, Zara, and Walmart. They're able to provide multiple products and solutions to worldwide audiences and also keep that a low price. So, which means in order for them to stay in that cost leadership category, they're always looking for ways to decrease their production and operation costs. So it takes a lot of things to juggle to keep that position as well. And they're always looking for ways to find exclusive partnership with key suppliers and manufacturers and vendors to keep the cost down. And that's how they keep that cost leadership position and prevent others from coming in to play in their particular space. Now, the next one is the best cost strategy. So that's when you're providing the best cost, but for a narrow market. So think of companies like Netflix. Now, Netflix is not like IKEA. They don't have multiple products. They just have one specific solution. They're a streaming business. So if you're going to Netflix, you're there to watch a series or a movie. And it's the best cost because you're paying a low monthly fee. So instead of buying each series and each movie separately and renting them separately, you're able to watch multiple programs at one fixed price. Now, many of the other streaming categories would also fall under this case, but in some companies like Disney, now Disney has other categories. So that's why I picked Netflix for this specific solution. Now, at the same time, what about physical products? So in this case, I wanted to show you the example of Lexus. Now, Lexus is a car company, which is the same company as Toyota. It's another division. They have a different head office, a different management team. And Lexus focuses more specifically on being a luxury car at a low cost. So whereas Toyota, they have many trucks, they have motorcycles, they have cars, they have other equipment that's used for manufacturing and other use cases. Whereas Lexus is more focused. It's a narrow market. They're focusing on the people who want luxury cars but at a low cost. So the competition would be companies like Mercedes or BMW, except the users are getting a quality product at a lower cost. Now, the other area you can compete in is the differentiation strategy. Now, the differentiation strategy is when you're aiming to be different, but in a broad market. And one of the best examples in this case is a company called Samsung. Now, I'm sure you probably heard of them because Samsung has a lot of manufacturing and consumer products as well. So they have B2B, B2C in different categories. And they like to pride themselves on being different, more specifically when it comes to the consumer product. So one of the recent examples is the foldable phones. So it's debatable about if they came up with it or not, but right now I do believe they have a patent. So they are the ones that own the patent for that foldable phone, which means over the next few years, they're the only ones who are able to create that folding phone. So you're not going to find a folding phone from Apple or from the other suppliers. Samsung right now is dominating in that space. So they like to compete in the differentiation strategy in a broad market. Now, what about the focus strategy? The last one here on our example, that's when you're trying to be different for a narrow market. So you're not necessarily a broad market and a big area, it's more specific. So I wanted to show you this example, Patagonia. Now, Patagonia is a clothing company, and they do, I believe they have other equipments for anything outdoor activities, and they pride themselves on being environmentally friendly. So this screenshot you're seeing on the screen right now is from their website before they updated it. So initially, when you used to go to their website, the first thing you saw at the top was "We're in business to save our planet." Now, of course, they're always updating their website, so it's not there, but we can still take a look and see their core values. So for example, if we're clicking here on their core value page, you can see how they're using that being environmentally friendly to appeal to buyers who care about the environment. First of all, on their core values page, so you can see here they're going after quality, integrity, and then they mention environmentalism, so being environmentally friendly, justice, going after social causes, and then the last one, not bound by convention. So they're trying to invent and find new ways to do new things. So they're using their core messages to also convey how they are different as well. Now, another way they're conveying how they're different is through their materials. So if you go to their material page, you're going to notice that many of the materials on their website are recycled material, or it could be some kind of organic material. And also in the manufacturing process, they do mention how they are different and protecting the environment through their materials and manufacturing process. Now, another way they are showing that they're also focused is by creating this new category called worn wear. So if you've bought anything from Patagonia and it's still in good condition, now you can go to this particular segment of their website and you can sell your used material. So they're facilitating the recycling process and that circular economy of reusing material, even though it's their own product. So you can see here how they are a very good example of being very focused on using the focus strategy on being focused on a market that specifically wants to be outdoors and also likes to protect the environment at the same time. Now, unless you know how to play global monopoly, chances are your business is going to be on the right side of the quadrant. You're going to be in the narrow market. So the first one is the best cost strategy, which means you can focus on having the best price in a narrow market. Now, that can get tricky, especially if you're dealing on a global scale. Now, in a local market, you can compete on price, especially if you control the supply chain, you control the manufacturing, you might be able to compete on price. But when you're delivering a service that's also available worldwide, and many of the other countries are able to provide a similar service, then competing on cost is going to be very difficult, because you're going to find that there are many suppliers and vendors in lower cost of living countries, which means the labor cost there is much lower. So they can hire an army of people to deliver the same service at a much lower price. So competing on price might be a losing battle. And that's why I find that the focus strategy works for almost most businesses. 99.9% of the businesses are going to find it much easier if they try to create that competitive advantage by using the focus strategy. So now one of the ways or two ways that you can communicate that competitive advantage is, first of all, through business innovation, and the second is customer differentiation. So let me show you what that means. Now, business innovation could be when you talk about what it is that you're doing that's unique or different, that's innovative, that other people are not doing. So usually startups are called startups because they are innovating, and a traditional business is just called a traditional business is because they're not innovating. They're creating something that other businesses have. have. So the question you need to answer is, what is unique and innovative about your business setup and operations? Because it doesn't necessarily have to be technology. You could be innovating in other ways. So you'll need to explain that, first of all, to yourself, to your teams, or to investors, or anyone who's doing business with you, is if your innovation is worth your time and money. So do you want to be talking about innovation, or do you want to be talking about customer differentiation? Now, even if you don't need investors, you need to get clarity on this conversation as well. So let me first of all show you the innovation conversation. Does any of these apply to your particular case? Because if they do, you might be maybe you want to talk about innovation. So let's start with your product. Is there anything about your product, about the material or the manufacturing process that's innovative? If yes, you can talk about it. Is there anything proprietary about your technology? Do you have any innovative features that other people in a similar industry don't have? Then that would be your product innovation. Do you have innovation in your offering and your solution? Maybe you're creating a wider selection or a unique selection of products and services, or maybe you're narrowing down your products and offerings. That's how you plan to stay innovative. It could be about the experiences that the customers have with your business. So maybe you want to create a better onboarding experience, a better purchasing experience, a better support and sales experience. So innovation doesn't necessarily have to be technology. It could be about your business model, maybe the way you conduct your business, how you've structured your business. It could be about the niche market you picked. You could be innovating in that space. It could be that you're innovating in your distribution channels, or you're innovating in the networks that you have. Maybe you're having new networks that other people don't have. It could be, I saw one company that they found a new coffee supplier in a country that no one was tapping into before. So they're trying to innovate by showing that, hey, we're going to countries that no one is tapping into right now. It could be innovation about your operations and how you operate your business and what you're doing to streamline your income, your revenue, and your cost. What are you doing to get higher margins? So that could be innovative. Now, the innovative conversation would appeal a lot to investors or your leadership team if you're in a big project and you're getting that budget approval. More specifically, because investors and big leadership teams and big business, they're looking for solutions that are not easy to replicate. And that's why it's innovative. It's because you're not only because you're innovating, you're creating something new, it's because you have something that doesn't allow others to easily copy you. And that is what investors are usually looking for, because if a lot of people can copy you, then you're going to have to start to find different ways to communicate your competitive advantage. You're no longer innovating. It becomes like a common business that everyone has. Now, that competitive advantage and a way where you're able to compete in a format where others are not able to copy you very quickly is appealing to investors. And they even have a word for it. It's called economic moat, which means it's your business ability to maintain that competitive edge. Not does it means that you're not only competitive now, but you have something to help you stay competitive over at least the foreseeable future. And that's what they call it, economic moat. Now, you don't need to be a startup to be innovating. You can be successful business based on existing business models and solutions. In fact, most businesses are not even innovating. They're providing a similar product and service and solutions just like thousands and millions of other businesses in the same category. But you can still find ways to communicate how you're different or better. And that's what many call customer differentiation. So what can you offer to your customers that's different or better than other solutions on the market? Now, you might already have the answer to this question, especially if you completed this exercise. Now, do you remember this list? We worked on it earlier, and you had an exercise to pick 3 to 6 words, either from this list or from some other list. These are the words that help you communicate what your product can offer or your solution can offer the market. Now, the same words can be used or respun in a way to communicate your competitive advantage. So some of these words could be what it is that is unique about your business. So that's why you'll find many slides on the market. Now, this is a commercial template where you can see how they picked 4 words. So they're calling it competitive advantage, but they picked 4 words and they were giving it a little bit of a description. Now, of course, this is a commercial template, so the content is simulated, but I just wanted to show you why you would see slides that look like this, where you can pick these words to communicate what makes you different and better. Another similar slides, rather than word, they're using phrases, which is the same thing. Ease of use, which means easy, powered by tech and data. So this is again simulated, but you can see how you can use these placeholders to communicate how you're different if you're picking these words and categories. The same thing here, it could be a list. You don't even need to call your slide competition or competitive advantage. Just create a list with icons or something. Show what it is about your product. So it feels as if you're talking about the product, whereas in reality, you're communicating your competitive advantage. So it doesn't need to be that obvious. Or you can be obvious and use a table like we did with the analysis, where you can help your buyers. Just show them on a table where you stand in comparison to others, and that can help them make a buyer decision. You might also want to use the same matrix or quadrant diagram where you map out where do you fit in the scheme of things based on two criteria. Now, this might be more limiting because you can only pick two criteria, whereas if you use the table, you can list a bit more benefits and how you compare. So the idea here is to show how the area you decided to compete in, how you are different or better. So in this particular simulated example, you can see here it's speed and cost, and you can show where you fit or your solutions fit on the scheme of things compared to others. Now, you might find other templates on the market that looks like this are advantages with a longer paragraph. Now, if you're sending it as a document, you want to write a paragraph, you can, but in most cases, pitch decks are meant to be scanned. So try to go for points and make it scannable, but I just wanted to show you this could be an option you'll see on the market. Now, another option is, of course, is why work with us. So you'll find many slides on the market that says why choose our services. And once again, these words that you pick could be the differentiator words, and you can now turn it into a slide of why work with us. So you get to pick your three criterias. So you'll find many templates like this one on the market and this one. And you can see here how many of them are using the rule of three, where you pick three items. You don't want to give them too many words to focus on. People remember things in threes more. Now, I use the same strategy on my website as well, and when I'm creating a pitch deck, I say why work with us, and I've picked my three criteria: the experience, specialization, and results, and I focus my story on saying why am I competing in this space, and I give them these points. Now, another great way to convey how you're different is by relating your brand story. Now, remember the slide from the problem section, and where you get to say what is the big problem. You show a deep understanding and a specific person who specifically is facing this problem. Now, having a personal story that's tied to the problem will make it more meaningful to your audience. So investors want to know what makes you interested in solving this particular problem or finding a solution for this particular problem. Do you have a personal story about why you or someone you know struggle with this particular problem, and that's why you're focusing on solving it? So this could be a good way where it could give you that differentiation, because it's your story, it's your personal point, and other people cannot really replicate your story. So it's coming out more natural and more authentic as well. And the same thing with prospective clients, customers. They'll also trust you more and your solutions if they know why you came up with the solution. So here's an example. You might have seen them before, Burt's Bee. Now, Burt's Bee is a product that's available in many Whole Food stores. So if you go to any of the Whole Food stores, it's a natural product and a beauty product. So if you go to their website, it's updated now. But when they first started, it was like what you're seeing on the screen right now. The story of the founders was right there up front on the website. And of course, websites are always changing. Now, here, as you can see, it starts at the top, kind before it was cool. So they were showing how they're going with that message, how they were kind before it was cool to be kind. And if you scroll down the page, you can see here in the middle section, they have a picture, where is it, of the owner. He's on the motorcycle, rebels with a cause. And it tells a bit of the story of how this product came to be. And if you click on the See Our Story, then you're going to get to the full story to show how Bert and his wife came up with the product, how they were focusing on being natural, on being kind to nature. So really, they're using their story to convey how they're competitive. Now, many companies can come in and start a new product, a similar product with the same ingredients, but they don't have that original story that makes them different and shows why they cared about creating this particular product. So now you can see here on the matrix once again how all of these stories can fit in, and you get to decide where and how you want to share your story, and that story can change depending on who you're talking to and what stage of your business you're at. Now, in the next video, you're going to learn more about the competitive approach, because the market is always changing. So how do you plan to stay competitive? That's what your approach is. How do you plan to approach competition when people start coming in to play in your space? But before we do that, can you remember what are the most competitive strategies, more specifically for a broad market and a narrow market? Do you remember these ones? They are from Michael Porter. Do you remember? Well, here they are again. First of all, you got the cost leadership. That's when you're competing on cost in a mass market. Then you have the differentiation strategy. That's when you're trying to be different in a big market. Remember Samsung. And then the third one is the best cost strategy. That's when you're trying to have the best price for a niche market. And of course, the focus strategy, which is where you're being focused specifically on a story or on a problem or on a particular area for a narrow market. And in 99.9% of the cases, for most small and new businesses, the focus strategy is going to be the best strategy for you to communicate that difference. So your action items for this video really is to create one or more slides to convey your competitive advantage. You get to decide how that works in your particular case, or you can create one or more slides to show your audience how they can be more competitive by implementing your solutions. Because remember, the only reason really you're sharing your competitive advantage is to help your audience understand why they would be doing business for you. And in many cases, it could be that you are there to help them be more competitive. So go ahead and get started, and I'll see you in the next video.